My wife said, "Don't wait up tonight." I smiled and said, "Tell Mark I said hi." The color drained from her face. That's when the game began. 3 months. That's how long I'd been watching Melissa pretend she was working late at the office. 3 months of book club meetings that never involved books, and girls' nights where she came home smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. But the real kicker? Mark Patterson wasn't just some random guy from her office. He was my business partner's brother, the mortgage broker who'd helped us refinance our house 2 years ago. The same guy who'd sat at our kitchen table, drinking my coffee and talking about family values. I'm Jake Barnes, and I run a small carpentry business here in Millfield, Maine. Nothing fancy, just me, my tools, and 20 years of experience turning other people's broken things into something useful again. Funny how that skill set was about to come in handy for my personal life. "Jake, are you listening to me?" Melissa stood in our bedroom doorway, checking her reflection in the mirror. She'd spent 40 minutes on her makeup tonight, for book club. "Every word, sweetheart. You were saying something about discussing romance novels with the ladies." She flinched. Good. Let her wonder what I knew. "It's contemporary fiction, actually. We're reading this story about a woman who discovers her true self through adversity." "Sounds inspiring. What's it called?" The pause lasted too long. It's called The Awakening." I nodded thoughtfully. "Kate Chopin. Great choice, though I'm pretty sure that book ends with the main character walking into the ocean. Hope your book club has a happier discussion planned." Melissa's face went pale. She grabbed her purse and keys with shaking hands. "I'll be home late. Don't wait up." The front door slammed behind her, and I listened to her car back out of our driveway. Then I walked to the kitchen window and watched her taillights disappear down Maple Street. She'd turned left at the corner, toward downtown and Mark's apartment above the real estate office. I poured myself a bourbon and settled into my workshop in the basement. Time to plan. See, here's the thing about being a carpenter. You learn patience. You measure twice, cut once. You study the grain of the wood before you make your first mark. And when something's rotten, you don't just paint over it, you tear it out completely and rebuild from scratch. My phone buzzed. A text from Melissa. "Meeting running long. Definitely don't wait up." I texted back, "Love you too, honey." Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The lies were getting bolder. Last week, she'd claimed her book club was reading 50 Shades of Grey. When I mentioned that seemed like an odd choice for her literary society, she'd snapped that I didn't understand her need for intellectual stimulation. Right. Intellectual stimulation. That's what we were calling it now. I opened my laptop and pulled up our phone records. Amazing what you can access when you're the primary account holder. 3 months of late-night calls to Mark's number, dozens of texts during work hours, and the real smoking gun, a hotel charge on our joint credit card from last Tuesday, when Melissa claimed she was visiting her sister in Portland. My workshop felt smaller tonight, cramped with the weight of everything I'd discovered. The pegboard where I hung my tools seemed to mock me. All these instruments for fixing things, and I couldn't repair my own marriage. But maybe that was the point. Maybe some things weren't worth fixing. I walked upstairs and checked Melissa's home office. She'd been careless lately, leaving her personal laptop open. Her email was still logged in, and I scrolled through 3 months of messages that made my stomach turn. Not just the affair, though those details were nauseating enough, but the way she talked about me. "Jake's so predictable," she'd written to Mark. "He has no idea what's happening right under his nose. Sometimes I think he's too simple to figure it out." Simple. That stung more than the cheating. But here's what Melissa didn't understand about simple men like me. We notice everything. We just don't always let on. I'd seen the new lingerie she'd hidden in the back of her drawer. I'd noticed how she'd started going to the gym every Tuesday and Thursday, The same days Mark posted on social media about his workout schedule. I'd watched her delete text messages and change her phone's passcode. I'd been building a case against my own wife for 3 months, and tonight she'd finally given me the ammunition I needed to take action. My phone rang. Red Murphy from the Driftwood, our local pub. "Jake, you coming down tonight? Haven't seen you in a while." "Actually, Red, I think I will. Melissa's at her book club." Red's laugh was gravelly from 40 years of cigarettes. "Book club, huh? That what they're calling it these days?" "What do you mean?" Nothing. Just come on down. First round's on me." I locked up the house and drove to the Driftwood. The place was exactly what you'd expect from a Maine fishing town bar: weathered wood, nautical decorations, and the kind of regulars who'd been sitting on the same stools since the Reagan administration. Red was wiping down glasses behind the bar, his gray beard stained yellow from decades of smoking. "Bourbon? Make it a double." He poured the drink and slid it across the bar. "You look like a man with something on his mind." "Just thinking about marriage, Red." "You ever been married?" 3 times. That's how I learned to tend bar, needed a skill that would pay for alimony. Harvey Daniels, a lobsterman who'd been coming to the Driftwood since before I was born, swiveled on his stool. "Marriage is like a lobster trap, Jake. Easy to get into, hard to get out of, and somebody's always getting their claws dirty." "Speaking of dirty," Red said, polishing a glass with unnecessary intensity, "you know Mark Patterson's been asking about you." I kept my voice steady. "What kind of questions?" "Oh, you know, how's business, how's the wife, that sort of thing. Seemed real interested in your schedule, when you work late, when you're out of town on jobs." Harvey snorted. "That boy's been sniffing around town like a dog in heat. His brother Tommy works my boat sometimes, says Mark's been bragging about some married woman he's been seeing." My grip tightened on my glass. "Really?" "Yeah, real proud of himself. Says she's classy, sophisticated, not like the usual trailer park queens he goes for." Harvey took a long pull from his beer. "Tommy thinks the guy's an idiot. Says you don't mess with another man's wife unless you're prepared for the consequences." Red nodded. "Smart kid, that Tommy. Mark, on the other hand, well, let's just say he's always been too clever for his own good." I finished my bourbon and ordered another. The alcohol was warming my chest, loosening the tight knot of anger that had been growing there for months. "Red, you ever notice how some people think they're smarter than everyone else? Every day, usually right before they do something spectacularly stupid. What would you do if someone was disrespecting your family, hypothetically speaking?" Red set down his towel and looked me straight in the eye. "Hypothetically. I'd make sure they understood the error of their ways, but I'd be smart about it. No point in making a mess you can't clean up." Harvey raised his beer. "To hypothetical justice." I clinked my glass against his bottle. "To making sure people understand their mistakes." The bourbon was making me philosophical, or maybe just honest. You know what the worst part is? It's not even the cheating. It's the assumption that I'm too stupid to figure it out. "Some folks confuse quiet with stupid," Red said. "Usually costs them in the end." I left the Driftwood around 11, my head clear despite the alcohol. The night air was crisp, carrying the salt smell of the harbor. Millfield looked peaceful in the moonlight. White houses with green shutters, picket fences, the kind of town where people still left their doors unlocked. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, whether you wanted them to or not. That was going to work in my favor. I drove home slowly, taking the long way past Mark's apartment. His car was parked in the alley behind the building, next to a familiar silver Honda. Melissa's car. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. I parked across the street and waited. 20 minutes later, I saw movement in the second-floor window. Shadows moving against the blinds. My wife and my business partner's brother, playing house while I sat in my truck like some pathetic private investigator. But I wasn't pathetic. I was patient. And patience, as any good carpenter knows, is the difference between a job well done and a disaster waiting to happen. My phone buzzed with another text from Melissa. Discussion went really late. Staying at Carla's tonight. See you tomorrow. I texted back, sweet dreams, honey. Then I drove home, parked in my empty driveway, and walked into my empty house. But I wasn't alone. I had a plan forming, and that was better company than a cheating wife any day. The next morning, Melissa came home with coffee and bagels from downtown, acting like she'd spent the night at her friend Carla's place discussing literature. She kissed my cheek and asked about my evening. Quiet night, I said, accepting the coffee. Went down to the driftwood for a drink. Red was asking about you. She stiffened slightly. What did you tell him? That you were expanding your intellectual horizons. He seemed impressed. Melissa relaxed and started chattering about her fictional book discussion. She was a good liar. I had to give her credit. 3 months ago, I might have believed her. But once you know what to look for, the tells become obvious. The way she avoided eye contact when she mentioned specific details. How she over-explained simple things. The nervous habit of touching her wedding ring when she talked about her friends. I'm thinking of joining a gym, she announced, buttering her bagel with unnecessary focus. Great idea. Which one? That new place downtown. Fit Life. They have yoga classes and personal trainers. I nodded thoughtfully. Fit Life was 2 blocks from Mark's office. Sounds expensive. We can afford it, Jake. I work hard. I deserve to take care of myself. There it was. The subtle dig about money. Melissa made decent money as an HR manager at the insurance company, but my carpentry business paid most of our bills. Still, she'd developed this habit of talking about deserving things, as if our marriage was somehow holding her back from her true potential. Of course you do, honey. Sign up for whatever makes you happy. She smiled and kissed my forehead. You're the best husband ever. The irony was suffocating. After Melissa left for work, I called my friend Liam Rodriguez. We'd gone to high school together, and now he ran a small computer repair shop downtown. More importantly, he had a flexible schedule and owed me a favor from when I'd renovated his kitchen for cost. Jake, what's up, man? I need some help with a project. You free this afternoon? Sure. What kind of project? The kind that requires discretion and maybe some of those technical skills you're always bragging about. Liam was quiet for a moment. Everything okay? Not really, but it will be. We met at my workshop after lunch. Liam was a small guy with nervous energy and thick glasses, the kind of person who could make any electronic device do things it wasn't supposed to do. He looked around my basement with appreciation. Nice setup. What do you need? I showed him the evidence I'd compiled. Phone records, credit card statements, email printouts. His expression grew more serious as he read. Jake, I'm sorry. This is rough. I'm not looking for sympathy, Liam. I'm looking for solutions. What kind of solutions? I pulled out a small GPS tracker I'd ordered online. I want to know where she goes, when she goes there, and how long she stays. Nothing illegal, just information. Liam examined the device. This is pretty basic. Magnetic mount, real-time tracking through a phone app. Where are you planning to put it? Her car. Somewhere she won't notice. Jake, are you sure about this? Once you start down this road? I'm already on this road, Liam. I've been walking it for 3 months. Now I just want to see where it leads. He sighed and pocketed the tracker. I'll install it tonight when she's asleep. But Jake, promise me something. Whatever you're planning, keep it legal. I'm a carpenter, not a criminal. I just want to know the truth. That evening, Melissa announced another book club meeting. This time they were discussing relationship dynamics in modern literature. She'd be late again, maybe staying at Carla's if the discussion ran long. Have fun, I said, kissing her goodbye. learn something new. After she left, Liam came over with his toolkit. We went to the garage where Melissa parked her Honda. "Wheel well is your best bet," he said, crawling under the car with a flashlight. "Magnetic mount will hold it secure, and she'll never see it unless she's looking for it." The installation took 5 minutes. Liam showed me how to use the tracking app on my phone, real-time location, movement alerts, historical data. "Technology's amazing these days," he said. 20 years ago, you would have needed a private investigator and a lot of money to get this kind of information. 20 years ago, people had more shame about their behavior." We tested the system, and sure enough, Melissa's car showed up as a blue dot on my phone screen, currently parked behind Mark's building. The timestamp showed she'd arrived at 7:23 p.m., 15 minutes after leaving our house. "There's your confirmation," Liam said quietly. "There's my ammunition." Over the next week, I watched Melissa's patterns emerge on my phone screen. Tuesday and Thursday, gym sessions that lasted exactly 2 hours at Mark's apartment. Wednesday, grocery shopping trips that included a stop at the same location. Friday, girls' nights that began and ended at Mark's place, with occasional detours to actual restaurants where they apparently went on dates. But the real revelation came the following Tuesday. Melissa's car spent the entire afternoon at the Coastal Inn, a hotel 20 minutes outside town. She'd told me she was working late on quarterly reports. I drove to the hotel and parked where I could see the entrance. At 5:30, Melissa and Mark walked out together, laughing and holding hands like teenagers. She was wearing the blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. That night, when she came home smelling like hotel soap and claiming to be exhausted from her long day at the office, I almost felt sorry for her. The lies were becoming so elaborate, so detailed, that she was probably exhausting herself keeping track of them all. "How were the quarterly reports?" I asked. "Tedious. Numbers everywhere. My brain feels like mush." I nodded sympathetically. "Maybe you should take a vacation. Get away from all that stress." "Maybe we both should. When was the last time we went somewhere together?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. When was the last time? I couldn't remember. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped being a couple and started being roommates who shared expenses and occasionally had awkward conversations over breakfast. "We should plan something," I said. Melissa smiled, and for a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married 8 years ago. Young, hopeful, excited about our future together. Then she yawned and said she was going to bed early. I stayed downstairs staring at my phone screen. The blue dot representing my wife's car sat in our driveway, but the woman upstairs felt like a stranger. The next morning, I called my other friend, Ty Morrison. Ty was a big guy who worked construction and had a talent for creative problem solving. More importantly, he had a pickup truck and a flexible moral compass when it came to helping friends in need. "Jake, haven't heard from you in forever. What's going on?" "I need help with a project, the kind that might get messy. My favorite kind. When and where?" We met at the Driftwood that afternoon. Ty listened to my story while working his way through a plate of fish and chips, occasionally shaking his head or muttering curses under his breath. "So what's the plan?" he asked, finally. "I want them to know I know, but I want to control how that information comes out. Public humiliation? Something like that. But it has to be smart, legal. No violence, no property damage that can't be explained as accidents or pranks." Ty grinned. "I like the way you think. What did you have in mind?" I pulled out a notebook where I'd been sketching ideas. "Mark's car is his pride and joy, right? That red Mustang convertible he's always posting on social media?" "Yeah, he treats that thing like a baby." "What if it developed some problems? Nothing permanent, nothing that would hurt him, just inconvenient." Ty studied my notes. "Paint stripper on the hood would eat through the clear coat. Sugar in the gas tank is a myth, but corn syrup in the oil reservoir would make the engine seize up. And if someone happened to leave some fish scraps in the air vents during this warm weather, hypothetically speaking. Of course, hypothetically that car would be undrivable within 24 hours. I closed the notebook. Hypothetically, when would be the best time for these mechanical failures to occur? Tomorrow night. Mark always parks behind his building. No security cameras, plenty of cover. Hypothetically. That night, Melissa announced she was going to the gym. I watched on my phone as her car went straight to Mark's apartment and stayed there for 2 hours. When she came home, she was wearing different clothes and her hair was damp, apparently from the shower at the gym. Good workout? I asked. Great. I'm really getting back in shape. I nodded and went to bed early, setting my alarm for 2 a.m. Ty met me 3 blocks from Mark's building. We walked through the alley, dressed in dark clothes and carrying a small bag of supplies. Mark's Mustang sat under a streetlight like a red beacon of arrogance. You sure about this? Ty whispered. I'm sure about a lot of things lately. The work took 15 minutes. Paint stripper carefully applied to spell out cheater across the hood in letters that would appear when the sun hit them tomorrow. Corn syrup in the oil reservoir, and a generous helping of fish scraps, courtesy of Harvey's lobster boat, distributed throughout the air conditioning system. He's going to have a very bad day, Ty said as we walked back to our trucks. Good. Maybe it'll give him time to think about his life choices. The next morning, I was drinking coffee and reading the news when my phone rang. Mark Patterson calling at 7:30 a.m. Jake, thank God. I need help, man. Someone vandalized my car last night, destroyed the paint, ruined the engine. It smells like something crawled inside and rotted. I made sympathetic noises. That's terrible, Mark. Any idea who would do something like that? No clue. I mean, I haven't made any enemies lately. I keep to myself, you know? Don't mess with anyone's business. The irony was so thick I could have cut it with a saw. Maybe it was random. You know how kids are these days. Yeah, maybe. Listen, can you recommend a good body shop? This is going to cost me thousands. I'll ask around. In the meantime, maybe you should be more careful about where you park and who you spend time with. There was a long pause. What do you mean? Just that small towns have long memories, Mark. People notice things, they talk. Another pause. Right. Well, thanks for the advice. He hung up and I smiled into my coffee. Round 1 to the carpenter. Melissa came home from work that day full of gossip about Mark's car troubles. Apparently the whole office was talking about it. Someone had really done a number on his Mustang, and the smell was so bad he'd had to take sick leave. Poor Mark, she said, shaking her head. Who would do something so mean? Probably someone who doesn't like him very much, I suggested. But everyone likes Mark. He's so charming and helpful. I nearly choked on my beer. Helpful. Right. That weekend, Melissa announced she was going shopping with her friend Carla. I watched on my phone as her car went to the mall, then to Mark's apartment, then to a restaurant downtown. A nice long date while I stayed home and worked on kitchen cabinets for a client. But I wasn't just working. I was planning. Monday morning, I called Melissa's office and asked to speak with her supervisor, Mr. Robert Shipley. I'd met him at the company Christmas party, a thin, nervous man who took company policy very seriously. Mr. Shipley, this is Jake Barnes, Melissa's husband. I wanted to thank you for being so understanding about her recent schedule changes. Schedule changes? All the late nights she's been working, the quarterly reports, the special projects. She comes home exhausted, but she says you really appreciate her dedication. There was a long pause. Mr. Barnes, I'm not sure what you mean. Melissa hasn't been working any late nights lately. In fact, she's been leaving early most days. Oh. Maybe I misunderstood. She's been coming home late, so I assumed. Perhaps you should discuss this with your wife directly. You're absolutely right. Thanks for your time. I hung up and smiled. Now Melissa's boss knew she'd been lying about something. He'd be watching her more carefully, asking questions. The pressure was building. That afternoon, I got a call from Harvey at the Driftwood. "Jake, you need to get down here. There's been some interesting developments in the Mark Patterson situation." I found Harvey at his usual stool, grinning like he'd won the lottery. "What's got you so excited?" "Mark came in here this morning, drunk as a skunk at 11 a.m., started running his mouth about his personal life." Red leaned across the bar. "Tell him what he said about the married woman." Harvey's eyes gleamed. "He's bragging about how he's got this married woman wrapped around his finger. Says she's going to leave her husband soon and they're going to run away together. Talks about how the husband's too stupid to figure out what's happening." My grip tightened on my beer bottle. "Really?" "Gets better. He says the husband's some kind of blue-collar worker beneath his woman's intelligence. Says she deserves better than some guy who works with his hands for a living." Red shook his head. "Man's got no class. You don't talk about another man's wife like that, even if you are messing around with her." "Did he mention any names?" I asked. "Didn't have to. Tommy Patterson was here and he looked mortified. Kept trying to get his brother to shut up, but Mark was on a roll. Finally, Tommy dragged him out of here, but not before half the bar heard the whole story." I finished my beer and stood up. "Interesting story, Harvey. Thanks for sharing." "Jake, you okay? You look a little pale." "Just thinking about how stupid some people can be." That night, Melissa had another book club meeting. I watched her drive to Mark's apartment and decided it was time for the next phase of my plan. I called Liam. "Remember that favor you owe me? I need to collect." "What do you need?" Jake wanted access to Mark Patterson's social media. Nothing permanent, just long enough to make a single post. "Jake, that's hacking," Liam said. "It's justice. 5 minutes, one post, then we're done." An hour later, Liam called back. "I'm in. Password was Mustang 2019. What do you want to post?" Jake smiled. Something vague and romantic. Let people draw their own conclusions. The post went live at 9 p.m. By 10, half of Millfield was buzzing about Mark's mysterious confession. Melissa texted, "Book club running late. Don't wait up." Minutes later, Jake watched her car leave Mark's apartment. When she came home flushed and nervous, he asked casually, "How was book club?" "Fine. We discussed character development." "Learn anything interesting?" She hesitated. "Jake, is there something you want to ask me?" He just smiled. "No, just thinking about trust." That night, Melissa locked herself in the bathroom and whispered into her phone. Soon after, Jake's phone buzzed with a message. "We need to talk. The Marina, 10 p.m. He didn't need to guess who it was. At the fog-covered marina, Mark waited, pacing near the docks. "Jake, we need to clear the air. The post, the gossip, everything." Jake leaned against a piling. "No idea what you're talking about." Mark's eyes narrowed. "Cut it out. You know exactly what." The game was no longer online. It was face-to-face. He stared at me for a long moment, trying to read my expression in the dim light from the dock lamps. About me and Melissa. There it was, the confession I'd been waiting 3 months to hear. "What about you and Melissa?" We've been seeing each other." I nodded slowly, as if processing this information for the first time. Seeing each other, like socially. "Jake, come on, don't make this harder than it has to be." "I'm not making anything hard, Mark. I'm just trying to understand what you're telling me. Are you saying you're having an affair with my wife?" He flinched at the word, affair. "It's not like that. It's more complicated." "How is it more complicated?" "We didn't plan this. It just happened. We connected on a deeper level, intellectually. Melissa needs someone who can challenge her mind." I almost laughed. "And you think you're that someone?" "I know I am. Jake, no offense, but you and Melissa have grown apart. She's evolved, and you're still the same guy you were in high school. The same guy she married. People change. Melissa has changed. She deserves someone who can keep up with her." The fog was getting thicker, muffling the sounds of the harbor, a perfect setting for what came next. "Mark, Let me ask you something. Do you think I'm stupid? What? Simple question. Do you think I'm too stupid to figure out what's been going on? He shifted uncomfortably. I think you're a good guy who's been in denial. Denial about what? About the fact that your marriage is over, has been over for months. I pushed off from the piling and took a step closer to him. See, that's where you're wrong. My marriage isn't over, it's just changing. What do you mean? I mean, I've learned some interesting things about my wife lately, and about you. Mark's face went pale in the dock lights. What kind of things? Well, for instance, I learned that Melissa's been lying to her boss about working late. Mr. Shipley was very surprised to hear about all those extra hours she's supposedly been putting in. You called her boss? I called to thank him for being so understanding. Imagine my surprise when he told me Melissa's been leaving early most days. Mark started backing toward the parking area. Jake, look, maybe we should all sit down and talk about this like adults. Oh, we're going to talk. But first, let me share some other interesting discoveries. I pulled out my phone and showed him the tracking app. Amazing technology these days. I can see exactly where my wife goes, when she gets there, how long she stays. His eyes widened as he recognized his own address on the map. You've been tracking her? I've been tracking my car, the one that's registered in my name, that I pay insurance on. Perfectly legal. This is crazy, Jake. You're acting like a stalker. I'm acting like a husband who wants to know where his wife spends her time, and her money. Did you know she charged a hotel room to our joint credit card last week? Mark was sweating now, despite the cool night air. Jake, I think you should talk to someone, a therapist or something. This obsession isn't healthy. You're probably right. Marriage counseling might be exactly what Melissa and I need. We could discuss trust, honesty, fidelity. What do you think? I think I should go. Actually, Mark, I think you should stay. We're just getting to the interesting part. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder app. See, I've been documenting everything. Phone calls, text messages, witness statements from people around town who've seen you two together. Witness statements? Oh, yes. Turns out, you're not as discreet as you think. Half the town knows about your affair. They're just waiting to see what happens next. Mark's face crumpled. Jake, please. I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen, and now we need to figure out what to do about it. What do you want? I smiled, and even I could tell it wasn't a friendly expression. I want you to understand something, Mark. I'm not the simple, stupid husband you and Melissa think I am. I'm a man who's been planning his next move for 3 months. What next move? You'll find out soon enough. But here's what's going to happen right now. You're going to go home, and you're going to think very carefully about whether this affair is worth what it's going to cost you. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you about consequences, about small towns, about what happens when you disrespect another man's family. Mark started walking backward toward the parking area, but I matched his pace. Jake, I'll end it. I'll stop seeing her. We can pretend this never happened. Oh, it's too late for that, way too late. What do you mean? I mean the whole town is already talking. Your Facebook post really got people's attention. I didn't make any Facebook post. I showed him his phone screen. Really? Because it sure looks like your account, and your friends seem very interested in your love life. He stared at the post, his face going from pale to green. You hacked my account? I have no idea what you're talking about, but you might want to be more careful about your passwords. Mustang 2019 isn't exactly high security. You're insane. I'm thorough. There's a difference. We'd reached the parking area. Mark's rental car, apparently his Mustang was still in the shop, was parked under a broken streetlight. Jake, what do you want from me? I want you to go home and think about your choices, and I want you to remember something. What? This is my town, Mark. I've lived here my whole life. I know everyone and they know me. You're just the guy who messed with another man's wife. He fumbled with his keys, dropping them twice before managing to unlock his car. And Mark? Next time you want to brag about your conquests at the Driftwood, maybe make sure you know who's listening. He drove away without another word, his taillights disappearing into the fog. I stood in the empty parking lot for a few minutes, breathing in the salt air and planning my next move. My phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. "Where are you? Your truck isn't in the driveway." I texted back, "Went for a drive. Needed to clear my head. Be home soon." "Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect, honey. Just had an interesting conversation with an old friend." The drive home took 10 minutes, but I spent another 20 parked at the end of our street, watching our house. Melissa was moving around inside, probably pacing and checking her phone. The lights were on in every room. She was too agitated to sit still. When I finally walked through the front door, she was waiting in the living room with a glass of wine and a forced smile. "How was your drive?" "Enlightening. Sometimes you need to get out of the house to see things clearly." "See what things?" I sat down across from her and studied her face. 8 years of marriage, and I was just now seeing her clearly. The calculating eyes, the practiced expressions, the way she tilted her head when she was lying. "Melissa, do you remember our wedding vows?" "Of course. Why?" "Just curious. What did we promise each other?" She shifted uncomfortably. "The usual things. Love, honor, cherish. Forsaking all others." "Right. That too. Do you think those vows still matter?" "Jake, why are you asking me this?" "Because I've been thinking about marriage lately, about trust, about what happens when people break their promises." She set down her wine glass with shaking hands. "I think I should go to bed." "Good idea. You look tired. All those late nights are probably catching up with you." She paused at the bottom of the stairs. "Jake, if there's something you want to say to me, just say it. I love you, Melissa. I've always loved you. I just wish you loved me enough to tell me the truth." She stared at me for a long moment, tears forming in her eyes. For a second, I thought she might confess everything. But then her expression hardened. "I don't know what you think you know, but you're wrong." "Am I?" "Yes. And I'm getting tired of these accusations and weird comments. Maybe you should talk to someone about your paranoia." She went upstairs, and I heard the bedroom door close. A few minutes later, I heard her talking on the phone again, probably calling Mark to compare notes about our conversation at the marina. I poured myself a bourbon and opened my laptop. Time to plan the final phase. The next morning, Melissa left for work without saying goodbye. I watched from the kitchen window as she backed out of the driveway, her movements sharp and agitated. The tracking app showed her going straight to the office, no detour to Mark's apartment. Apparently, my conversation with him had spooked them both. Good. Scared people make mistakes. I called Ty and asked him to meet me at the Driftwood for lunch. When I arrived, he was already at a corner table working his way through Red's famous fish sandwich. "You look like a man with a plan," he said as I sat down. "I am. But this next part is going to require perfect timing and absolute discretion. My 2 favorite things. What do you need?" I pulled out a notebook and showed him my sketches. "Tomorrow night is the monthly Chamber of Commerce dinner at the Anchor restaurant. Half the town will be there, including Melissa, her boss, Mark's co-workers, and most of the local gossips." "Okay. Melissa doesn't know I bought tickets. She thinks I'm working late on the Henderson kitchen cabinets." Ty grinned. "Surprise party?" "Something like that. But first, we need to set the stage." I explained my plan. It was elaborate, risky, and required split-second timing. But if it worked, it would be the most spectacular public humiliation in Millfield's history. "Jake, that's either brilliant or completely insane." "Probably both. You in?" "Wouldn't miss it for the world." That afternoon, I called Liam and asked him to meet me at my workshop. When he arrived, I showed him the final piece of evidence I'd been saving, a video I'd recorded on my phone the night before, when Melissa thought I was out for a drive. "Jake, this is proof, audio and video of her admitting the affair to Mark on the phone." "How did you get this?" "I never left the house last night. I hid in the basement and recorded her phone conversation through the heating vents. Amazing what sound carries through old ductwork." Liam watched the video, shaking his head. "She's really laying it all out there, talking about leaving you, taking half your assets, starting over with Mark. My favorite part is where she calls me too simple to figure it out." "Jake, what are you going to do with this?" "I'm going to show it to everyone who matters in this town, all at once, in front of witnesses." "That's nuclear, man. You sure you want to go that far?" "Liam, she's been planning to destroy my life for months, talking to lawyers, moving money around, setting up a narrative that makes me look like the bad husband. I'm just accelerating her timeline." The next evening, I put on my best suit and drove to the Anchor restaurant. The monthly chamber dinner was Millfield's biggest social event. Local business owners, town officials, and their spouses all gathered to network and gossip. Perfect audience for what I had planned. I arrived early and found a table with a clear view of the entrance. Melissa walked in at 7 p.m. with her coworkers, wearing the black dress I'd bought her for Christmas. She looked stunning, confident, completely unaware that her world was about to collapse. Mark arrived 10 minutes later with his real estate colleagues. He spotted me immediately and went pale, but Melissa hadn't seen me yet. She was too busy working the room, playing the role of the successful, sophisticated wife. At 7:30, I stood up and walked to the front of the room where the microphone was set up for the evening's presentations. "Excuse me, everyone. Sorry to interrupt, but I have an announcement to make." The room quieted. Melissa finally saw me, and the color drained from her face. "For those who don't know me, I'm Jake Barnes. I run Barnes Carpentry here in town, and I've lived in Millfield my whole life." Polite applause. People were confused, but attentive. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank everyone who's been so supportive of my wife, Melissa, and me over the years. Marriage is hard work, and it means a lot to have friends and neighbors who care about your relationship. Melissa was trying to get to the front of the room, but the crowd was too thick. "Unfortunately, I recently discovered that my wife has been having an affair with Mark Patterson." The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, chairs scraping as people turned to look at Melissa and Mark. Now, I know what you're thinking. This isn't the appropriate venue for personal business. But here's the thing. My wife and her lover have been conducting their affair very publicly, right here in our community. They've been to restaurants together, hotels together, and they've been planning to destroy my reputation so they can be together without consequences. Melissa had stopped trying to reach me. She was standing frozen in the middle of the room, tears streaming down her face. I have evidence, of course. Phone records, credit card statements, witness testimony, and this. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the restaurant sound system. The recording of Melissa's phone conversation filled the room, her voice clearly discussing her plans to leave me, take half my assets, and start over with Mark. "She's too simple to figure it out," Melissa's recorded voice said. "Jake's just a carpenter. He doesn't understand complex emotions or adult relationships." The room was completely silent, except for the recording. When it finished, I looked directly at Melissa. "Turns out, I'm not as simple as you thought." Melissa's boss, Mr. Shipley, stood up from his table. "This is highly inappropriate. Melissa, I think you should leave." "Actually," I said, "I think everyone should know the whole truth. Melissa's been lying to her employer about working late, using company time for personal affairs, and she's been planning to frame me as an abusive husband to justify her actions." I played another recording, Melissa discussing with Mark how to make me look like the bad guy in a potential separation. "We just need to establish a pattern of emotional abuse," her voice said. "My lawyer says if I can show he was controlling and paranoid, I can get a better settlement." The room was in chaos now. People were shouting questions, taking pictures with their phones, and several of Melissa's co-workers were backing away from her like she was contagious. Mark tried to slip out the back exit, but Ty was waiting for him. "Where you going, Romeo? Party's just getting started." "This is insane," Mark shouted. "Jake's having some kind of breakdown." I walked over to him, still holding the microphone. "Mark, would you like to tell everyone about your Facebook post? The one where you bragged about taking another man's wife?" "I never made that post." "Really? Because your account says otherwise, and your friends seemed very interested in your romantic confession." I showed the crowd his phone with the Facebook post still visible. Sometimes the best things in life belong to someone else, but not for long. The crowd was eating it up. This was better than reality TV. "And Mark, would you like to explain to everyone why you've been telling people at the Driftwood that you're going to steal a married woman from her simple husband?" Harvey stood up from his table. "That's exactly what he said, bragging about it like he was proud." Mark looked around the room desperately. "This is all taken out of context." "What context makes it okay to destroy someone's marriage?" I asked. Melissa finally found her voice. "Jake, stop this. You're humiliating yourself." "I'm humiliating myself? Melissa, you've been conducting a public affair for 3 months. You've lied to your boss, your friends, and your husband. You've stolen money from our joint accounts to pay for hotel rooms with your lover. And you've been planning to destroy my reputation to cover your tracks." I turned back to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you my wife, Melissa Barnes, and her lover, Mark Patterson. They've been entertaining you all with their secret romance, and now they want to make it official by destroying my life." The restaurant manager approached the microphone. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "Of course, I've said what I came to say." I handed him the microphone and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted in front of me like I was carrying a contagious disease. At the door, I turned back one last time. Melissa was sobbing in the middle of the room, surrounded by her co-workers who were all staring at her with disgust and fascination. Mark was trying to explain himself to a group of his business associates, but they were already walking away. "Oh, and Melissa?" I called across the room. "Don't wait up tonight. I'll be staying somewhere else." I walked out into the cool night air, leaving behind the chaos I'd created. My phone was already buzzing with calls and texts, but I ignored them all. I drove to Ty's house and knocked on his door. He opened it with a huge grin on his face. "Jake! That was the most spectacular thing I've ever witnessed. The whole town's going to be talking about this for years." "It's done," I said simply. "How do you feel?" I thought about it for a moment. Free. My phone rang, Melissa's number. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her message. "Jake, please come home. We need to talk. I can explain everything. It's not what you think. Please, just come home so we can work this out." I deleted the message and turned off my phone. Some things can't be fixed, no matter how skilled you are with tools. Some things are so broken, so rotten, that the only solution is to tear them out completely and start over. I'd spent 3 months planning the perfect revenge, and it had worked exactly as I'd hoped. By tomorrow, everyone in Millfield would know exactly what kind of people Melissa and Mark really were. Their reputations were destroyed, their careers were probably over, and their relationship was exposed as the sordid affair it had always been. Melissa had called me simple, too stupid to figure out what was happening under my own nose. But I'd proven that simple men can be very dangerous when they're pushed too far. The game was over, and I'd won. "Don't wait up tonight, Melissa. You've got nowhere left to go."